All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Robert Duff. This is the Hardcore Self-Help Podcast. And today I am just doing a bit of a check-in episode. It's been a while since I've done one of these, of just kind of talking to you person to person. I'm going to give you some podcast updates and also just do a little bit of a random show. I was somewhat inspired by Tim Ferriss. He's a great podcaster, writer as well, but he's had a couple really good episodes recently, which I will also mention another one. But he does this thing with his friend Kevin Rose, who's another influencer person and somebody in the tech space. They do something called the Random Show, where they just bring topics and chat as friends. Cool stuff, things they're interested in, etc. So I'm going to give you guys some podcast updates and talk about the state of the show, and then just give you a bit of random stuff. So if this is interesting to you, stick around. If it is not interesting to you, stick around and use this to fall asleep at some point. Just put me in your ears, rest your head, and chill with me. It's pretty late over here. It's 10 o'clock at night. I was waiting for the kids to go to sleep because I don't like recording when I might get interrupted or when they might scream because one of them's touching the other one or whatever. So I'm chilling. I finished my work day. It was a long day. Got a little drink for myself to just hang out, and I'm here with you guys. So first off, before getting into a lot of specifics, I just want to say podcast is not going anywhere. Don't want to scare anybody. I'm not canceling the show or really substantially changing it at all. I am just trying to be mindful of how I do it and my enjoyment of it and how I'm prioritizing things. So on that note, the first most important update is I actually fired my ad agency. I've been going through an ad agency for years now, which basically what they do is they find potential advertisers, ask if I'm interested, then they work out a deal with them, and I can do ads on the show for revenue. And this started a few years back when the podcast was sort of starting to really do well. There's kind of a magic number in the podcasting world, which is 10,000 downloads per episode within the first month, I think. Something to that effect. And once I passed that benchmark, then I was starting to get advertising. It continued growing and growing. At a certain point, the advertising revenue from the show was substantial, nothing crazy, but it was certainly a help, and it was a good justification for the amount of work that I put into the episodes, especially the ones that are me answering questions, doing a lot of research and things like that, which take a bit of time, as well as fees, equipment, et cetera, et cetera. But things have been slowing down podcast-wise. I mentioned that a few months ago. I think that the numbers are not what they once were, which is okay. But it made it so that the advertising offers were a little bit fewer and farther between. And that means in order to stay sort of selective and not compromise what I want to be doing with the show and promoting things that I don't actually want to promote, that means that there were less that I could do. Anyway, at a certain point, there was a longtime advertiser that had an issue with something, and I was not a fan of the way that they were trying to regulate my show and what I'm allowed to do on it. And that just kind of pissed me off. And so I pulled the plug on the whole thing. And I said, you know what, in that case, I'm just going to be done with you guys. And I don't want to be doing, an advertising agency like that right now. So I will, I think, have maybe 1 or 2 lingering advertisements that I have not finished up yet. But aside from that, right now, there's not going to be any advertising on the show. I will keep YouTube monetization on for episodes that don't have ads on them, because I do want to still have some revenue to help me out in this whole journey. But right now, there's not going to be, planned ads that are baked into the show for at least the immediate future. This doesn't mean that I will never have advertising again. I am open to it. Like I said, it is an important part of what I do to keep things going. But I am not interested right now in doing the same sort of thing. And who knows, maybe at some point a specific, very niche, appropriate company or product will want to sponsor a long period of the show, and I'd be cool with that. But right now, I'm not going to worry about that. So I'm going to tie up those loose ends and then really not worry too much about advertising for the moment. So other things, I have been doing some stuff differently. You've probably noticed with the show. The biggest one, obviously, is that I've been doing interviews, and I'm really happy with them. If you listen to my first interview back with Jenny Ketchum-Crooks, I was admitting to her that I was super nervous, and, I edited out me like hyperventilating into the mic because I was so nervous about it, and things have changed so much. Imagine that you practice something, you continue doing it, and it's just sort of an exposure thing. Just like with any anxiety situation, the more you do it, the more you gain mastery over it. And now I am enjoying the interviews, and I'm really having fun building that skill of mine. And I think I'm continuing to get better and better at it. I've had some really good ones. I really, really liked the one that I did last week with David Burns. I really liked the one that I did with Patrick McGrath from No CD. There's a few other ones that have gone really well. And I have some great upcoming ones as well. I have an episode with Seth Godin. So if you know who he is, probably doesn't require a lot of introduction for many of you. I have some upcoming episodes about ADHD in women, which I think is a really important topic that isn't talked about quite as much as it should. I have an episode about childhood trauma, about suicide prevention. These are all with really interesting and compelling guests. So yeah, I'm happy about that. And one of the things that I've been really pleased to hear from guests is the statement of, nobody's asked me that before. Thank you for asking me that. And that to me is like really, that's pay dirt for me. I feel like I've compared my journey and who I want to be as an interviewer to Sean Evans from Hot Ones before, meaning a lot of people think he's a really good interviewer. I don't have his style. I don't want to have his style. I don't want to excessively research and be able to pull out things from people's past that they didn't think anybody knew. That's not interesting to me. I want to be able to open people up in a way that they haven't previously in interviews. So when people are like, wow, thank you for asking that. Nobody's asked me that before. I'm like, ching. That's what I like. So it's been great, and I appreciate the feedback that you guys have given me, and I'm going to keep doing that for sure. I took a long hiatus from interviews, and I'm just happy to be back doing them. I've also been trying to kind of spice up the format of the podcast a bit. It hasn't really been consistent. You might, if you're paying very close attention, which I know a couple of you at least do, you may have noticed that I kind of go back and forth between tweaking things a little bit differently with how I introduce an episode, how I edit them. And yeah, that's just been to make it something a little bit different. For a long time, it's been more episodes like this where it's sort of like very personalized. I'm sharing a lot of my own details, and I'm not opposed to that still, but I kind of wanted to polish the show a little bit more and make it into something that somebody who doesn't already know who I am, doesn't already know my whole shtick, could stumble upon it and really get some value out of it. So that means, doing some, little teasers at the beginning, kind of crafting a narrative for how this interview or this, topic that I'm discussing is going to go, and cutting out a lot of the kind of, self-serving, I'm so-and-so, this is what I do, and blah, 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 blah. One side effect of that, though, is that I have been getting a whole lot less questions. So I do need to get better about reminding you guys that you can email me, which you can, at duffthepsych@gmail.com if you want to send me a question, topic, anything for the show. So I need to, continue working on that. But I've been enjoying finding a different way to go about the process of podcasting and putting everything together. So I mentioned that my numbers for the show have continued to not be amazing. They're not stellar. They're not the best that they have been. Actually, I haven't checked the numbers themselves in a little while, like the recent numbers, which is probably a good thing. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about, that stepping away from my ad network helps me right now be less worried about that. Because when you are getting advertising, there's that certain number you have to hit. You're trying to chase that and really work at that. And there's costs and benefits to everything. But right now, it's nice to not have that at the front of my mind and be able to think more about longevity. What do I want this to continue evolving into? How can I make this something that serves me and you? How can I make sure that this is not a drain in a bad way to me, that this is something that makes me happy? Things of that sort. So yeah, it's been nice to not worry about that. But again, there is sort of a curious dip there. I know some of that is related to podcasting in general, how metrics are tracked, things of that sort. But I'm curious as well, if there's anything that you think could be contributing to that, or if there's any feedback that you have for me at all, positive, negative, or otherwise, please reach out. You can email me, like I said, duffthepsych@gmail.com. You can shoot me a DM on whatever social media platform if I'm accepting DMs on that platform. And if you ever want to support the show, the best ways are to leave a review if you haven't yet, to share the show. If there's something, even if it's a short from YouTube, if it's a interview that you liked, if it's a topic that I discussed from now or from the past that you think is applicable either to your entire friend network or to a specific person, please share it. It really, really helps out, and it helps to potentially allow somebody else to be helped personally by the content, which is really what matters to me. So those are ways you can support, and also give me feedback if you have any of it. I'd appreciate it. Other kind of professionally Duff the Psych type updates. I've been talking about my book on bipolar forever. I know you're probably like, yeah, you'll finish it someday, I'm sure, because it's been a much longer project than I anticipated, which that's how books work, right? You start off, you have fire under your ass, and you're like, okay, I have this idea, and you start and you go, and then at a certain point you go, oh shit, writing books is hard. I have other stuff I should be focusing on. And then you get back to it and you're like, yeah, I can do this. And then you come to a point where you're like, this project sucks. I don't know how to write. I hate everything. I'm just going to find something else to do for now. And now I'm over that hump and I'm making substantial progress on it. I have a draft that I printed out. I don't have it over here. Otherwise I would show you on the video. It's about this thick in terms of, I printed it out on regular sized paper. So it's going to be, not a huge book, but definitely larger than the other hardcore self-help books, I believe. But it's really good, I think. And I'm finding some great things that I hadn't put in yet that I want to add. I'm finding that there are little quotes that I share from it that people find very relatable or compelling. It's a bipolar book, but it's using bipolar as a platform to talk about a lot of different things, mental health related and life related. So I'm excited to put it out. I am in the process of basically editing it right now, fine tuning it, and then I'll be really, really going through it and trying to put it together into the finalized product. So I am making progress on it, and it is going to happen. God damn it, it's going to happen. But I think that's it for sort of like my, general professional podcast, etc. updates. So why don't we talk about just a few random things that I think have been interesting, things that are cool, stuff like that. First off, it's been a while since I've talked about anything AI, which I am still very much in the world of. I continue to use ChatGPT as my main AI platform, my main language model, and I use it every day, all the time, for many things. And if you haven't seen, ChatGPT has now been updated, so it has advanced voice mode, which is totally wild. If you haven't checked it out, there are videos out there. I thought about bringing it on the show to say hi. Why not? Let's do it right now. I'm gonna pull it up right now. The thing that's different about advanced voice mode is that it can respond in a very natural sort of way. I'll let it explain. Let me pull it up. Hey, ChatGPT, what's up? You're actually a guest on my podcast right now.
Hey, Dr. Duff. Wow, a podcast guest spot, huh? I'm honored. What's the topic for today's show?
I'm kind of just updating people about what's been going on for me, how the podcast is doing, and some random updates. And you're one of the random updates. I'm talking about things that I've been into, and I was explaining how the advanced voice mode is really cool.
That sounds like a great episode. It's awesome to hear you're enjoying the advanced voice mode. It's pretty fun being part of the show, even in a virtual way. How's everything else going with the podcast?
It's going pretty well, but can you give people just a quick overview of what's different about the advanced voice mode from the previous voice mode that you had?
Sure thing. The advanced voice mode is a step up from the basic text-to-speech feature. It makes conversations feel more natural and engaging.
Actually, you know what? I'll interrupt you there. I think they can look that up on their own. I'm going to get back to the show, but thank you very much for coming on and just talking for a bit.
Of course, Dr. Duff. It was great to be part of your show. Thanks for having me.
So that gives you a sense of the sort of conversational tone that it has. It used to be that when you talk to it, it would translate what you say into text, and then it would convert that on the back end. Then it would produce text output and then read that out loud to you, essentially. So it's much more of like a call and response, a lot of kind of glitches in terms of hearing you and stuff like that. This is, I think, natively audio. So it's processing it as audio, not as text. And so as you can see, I was able to interrupt it while I was talking, which is something you couldn't do before, at least not in a very fluid way. And there's some crazy applications for this. One thing that I am using it for is language learning. So it speaks many different languages. And, one thing I've done with this so far is say, hey, can we have a bilingual conversation in English and Spanish? I'll talk to you in Spanish, but if I make a mistake or there's anything you need to correct me on, feel free to jump in with English. I also might jump in with English with a question or two. Podemos empezar, can we start? And then it'll just speak to you in whatever language you're asking, and it works really well. You can also use it as a translator, which I think has some major potential, where you say, hey, I'm with this person. They only speak this language. I only speak English. So anytime you hear me speak English, can you please translate that to whatever language? Anytime you hear that language, can you translate it to English? And it kind of serves as a third person in the room, which is just incredible in terms of accessibility and things like that. It's not, at a place where it's standardized enough for me to use for like the assessments that I do in neuropsychology, but I can't wait until it is, because that would open so many doors, because it's hard to find providers that speak a certain language, and even worse, it's hard to find neuropsychologists that speak a specific language, and there's so many people that need services and they just don't exist. So even if it's not perfect, it might be a way for me to be able to provide those services, this or another platform. The future with that is just exciting. We're getting very close to that whole like universal translator thing you see in sci-fi. Another thing that it's good for is practicing conversation. As you heard, it's very conversational in tone. So I can see this for a variety of things. Let's say that somebody has social anxiety and they just want to practice a normal conversation, maybe get some feedback about the way that they talk. Same for somebody who maybe is like on the autism spectrum and they want to know, how they're sounding in terms of like a neurotypical point of view. If you want to practice for an interview, studying, all these things are great. I use it to study all the time, not like for school, but if I'm trying to learn about something. For instance, this morning I was, getting myself together, coffee, etc., and I wanted to learn a little bit more about Prader-Willi syndrome, which is a genetic issue, developmental disability, and I saw a patient today that had that, and so I was just asking it questions and getting a nice download of information while I was getting ready for the day. So big fan of that. It's just, very interactive rather than Googling something and having to read through everything. So I'm a big fan. And I think that if you have been on the fence about whether you want to get sort of the, whatever they call it, ChatGPT Plus or Premium, whatever the paid version is, this would be a pretty good rationale to get it, I think. Not that I'm sponsored or anything, but it's very useful. There's another AI platform called Notebook LM, and this is a free one from Google. So it's built into your Google account. You should already have access to it if you have a Google account. This one's a little bit different, but really cool because you can load up a lot of documentation. So you make like a new notebook. For example, I have one, I use this a lot for work. So I have like a notebook that's about mycotoxin exposure, which is mold exposure, which can lead to difficulties physically and cognitively. And so I'll upload a bunch of, research articles and notes that I've taken and a transcript from a YouTube video, different things like that. And it compiles all of that so you can chat with it and say, hey, based on the resources you have, what are the common cognitive symptoms of exposure to XYZ mycotoxin? And it will tell you that information. The crazy thing is they just added a ability to simulate a podcast. You'll have to check this out. Go YouTube it because it's wild. it's a 2-person thing. So right now they have only one way to do it, where, you generate a podcast based on your notebook, and it is 2 hosts. So like a male voice and a female voice, and it's like NPR style. So they're like, well, today, this is pretty crazy. We're going to be talking about mycotoxin exposure. And it's like, mycotoxin exposure? What's that? Well, you've seen that mold sometimes underneath your sink. Get this, you might actually be exposing yourself to something that can be potentially dangerous. And they just have a back and forth conversation based on your notes. It's wild. It's a little scary. I'm not going to lie. It's something that will probably freak a lot of you out, probably much more than the advanced voice mode I was talking about. But again, I can't imagine if these tools existed when I was in graduate school, when I was studying for the EPPP licensure exam for psychology. Incredible, use cases for that. So that's it for AI stuff. Next, I want to talk about a few silly things that I've been enjoying. One of which is a new obsession on YouTube. This is something that I've been putting on in the background while I work, while I'm writing reports or doing other things. And I find it very meditative as well as motivating. And that is point of view cooking channels. So there are a bunch of people out there, I'm realizing, that have like GoPros or whatever mount on their head for their camera, and they're chefs. So there's like a really good line cook. I think he's in Mexico or maybe, deep in Southern California. And, he's a one line cook. And he works solo. And so he'll be jamming through, a full busy morning of like 30 tickets. And it's just, no commentary, or at least not very much commentary, watching how he does things, how he goes about making all the stuff. There are similar ones in like a, upscale French restaurant or an Italian restaurant, or even like coffee, baristas and stuff. And it's just, I don't know, for me, it's like a really good background. It kind of keeps me company, keeps me off my phone as well if I'm doing it, from my phone. And something about watching people work and do their craft that they've done for years and being able to do it so efficiently, it just makes me feel like I can do my craft better for some sort of reason. So I'll try to remember to include a link to the channel that I've been enjoying, but there are many of them. I also saw there's like a similar channel that I have not checked out yet, which is somebody that works in a shipping center. So it's just them, bubble wrapping stuff, wrapping it, getting it ready for shipping. So much cool stuff on YouTube. The next silly thing that I've been enjoying is actually a game. You guys know that I'm, a fan of video games. I was also a pretty big fan of Pokemon back in the day. I've played, a few different, Pokemon games over the years, including the one on the Switch, or one of the ones on the Switch at least, but that was, when it first came out. Anyway, what I've been playing is a fan game, meaning it's not by the Pokemon Company or Nintendo. It's completely fan made, but it's an entire game, and it's called Pokemon Insurgent. So it's basically in, I think, like Game Boy Advance style. So you play it, on the computer. I think you could probably get it to work on your phone as well. But it's a fully realized game with a storyline and different kinds of Pokemon and stuff like that. And it's very fun, and it's just very impressive that it was completely made from scratch by a team. And you can download it for free. Just Google Pokemon Insurgent. It's a good time. It's a bit longer, I think, than some of the other games that are actual Pokemon games. So I haven't finished it yet, but I'm having a good time doing that. I mentioned earlier that Tim Ferriss, his podcast, kind of influenced me doing this today. He also had a really, really good interview with, is it Elizabeth Gilbert? Let me look that up. The author of Eat, Pray, Love. Yes, Elizabeth Gilbert. I don't know a ton about Elizabeth Gilbert just as a person. So, I don't know what she stands for, and much about her personal life or anything like that in regards to her views, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But just listening to this episode in isolation, they had a really good conversation, and she was very insightful. She provides a lot of good nuggets of wisdom, some good quotes in there, and things that I've definitely kept with me since I listened to it, especially in a time where things might be a bit hard, especially like in the world and such. It was something that was very reassuring for me to listen to. So I think that you may enjoy it as well. I'll try to remember to include a link to that, but it was one of the most recent episodes of the Tim Ferriss show. What else? Personal updates. I have been enjoying my new position at my private practice. I feel like, I don't know if I mentioned this on the show. I, a few months ago, negotiated a new position. So previously what I was doing is kind of, I was an hourly employee. I wasn't a 1099, like an independent contractor, but I was, billing by the hour for each case that I do. So depending on the amount of referrals coming in and factors like that, my, professional work income could be up and down. So I negotiated a salaried position with benefits. I have not had insurance benefits since I was a student. I've just been paying a ton of money out of pocket, and it's nice. So I've been enjoying that stability from that. And I've been doing some other things through, it's called Insight Neuropsychology, is the group practice that I work with. I've been blogging on the website, which if you have any interest in kind of more neurological, brain-focused things, there's some good blog posts on there that I've done. I've also been doing individual supervision with a few students, which has been really cool. I'm really finding that I enjoy the mentorship aspect of supervising in a clinical sense. I've done some before, but I think I'm kind of finding myself more as a mentor and as a supervisor, which has been a good experience. So looking forward to doing more of that. Health-wise, I have been getting into, I'm laughing because people in my life are probably rolling their eyes if they're listening. They don't listen. My wife doesn't listen. My girlfriend doesn't listen. Some of my family does. But anyways, I've been doing something called Rucking, which is a very, fancy way of saying walking with weight, and in particular with a weighted backpack. Something that kind of came from the military, rucking. They would go on, rucks, meaning military people wear their gear and go for long walks to get used to that. And for me, I've been, just wearing a weighted backpack with 30 pounds and going for, either short or long walks. It's been an easy thing to add to the routine when I'm walking the dog, for instance, or just going for myself. It's a lot lower impact than running on the joints and such. And there's a lot of really good research actually on how it helps with overall fitness and bone density, things like that. And it just doesn't feel very difficult. I find it enjoyable. So yeah, I've been doing that for a few weeks now, which I'm really enjoying. But yeah, other things are going pretty well. My relationships are going well, having fun with the kids. We've been getting creative together. We're working on a card and board game that we're making from scratch, kind of based on Minecraft, which has been really fun. Yeah. And I appreciate you guys. I'm happy to still be able to do this. And while every episode isn't quite as personal as it has been in the past like this, I'm happy to be able to do this every once in a while. I want to encourage you guys and give you some thoughts, because I know that it may be really hard right now for some of you, for a lot of you. There are wars going on, genocides, natural disasters, elections, just so much to be concerned about. And it can feel a little weird and odd living out your daily life, sitting behind a keyboard, doing whatever it is you do with all of that going on. So I give you permission to go easy on yourself and just recognize that it is hard. It's weird. It's hard. We're all trying to pilot our meat suits around in the world without being able to really have a huge impact on it. So we're all doing the best that we can, at least we're doing the best that we can in this moment with these circumstances. So, go easy on yourself. It's okay if you feel like you're not performing the way you should be, or you're not excelling in a given direction, or you're being less kind to yourself than you normally would want to be. Things are weird, and that's okay. It's okay. You're not doing anything wrong. So I absolve you of that burden. And I think that's what I got for you. Thank you very much for listening or watching. Remember, if you do want to send me something, please shoot me an email to duffthepsych@gmail.com. You can also use the contact form on my website at duffthepsych.com/contact. And I'll see you for the next episode. I think it'll be an interview. And that's it. Bye.